What is up, everybody? Josh Tapp here again, and welcome back to the Lucky Titan. And today we are here with Brittni Schroeder. And really, to just kind of intro this lady, we've been talking for 40 minutes before this call, which is very uncharacteristic of me. So she's a great conversationalist, first off. But we are both LDS Mormons, whatever you want to call it, which is really fun. It's fun to see other people from the same church. But we have a lot in common with business as well. But this lady has accomplished some amazing things. She's been featured on the Wall Street Journal. She's been on, oh my goodness, what was it? Famous news channel. Can you tell me,
Oh,
Brittni?
good morning. Good morning,
Good morning,
America.
America. Thank
Yes.
you. I don't watch the news, guys. I'm sorry. But she's been all over the place, very successful coach. And I wanted to bring her on because specifically, I think her and I jive really well when it comes to marketing topics and to scaling a business through systems. So I first want to kind of have you first off, obviously say hello, Brittni. Say hello to everybody.
Hey.
I'll make it uncomfortable for you and for everyone else. But it's good to have you here. And I want to kind of get right into your story so our audience knows where you're coming from. And so I want to ask you the epiphany moment. So for you, what was the big epiphany when you realized I could be a coach? I could actually teach people this stuff.
Ooh, that is a good one. So I think I've always had like an entrepreneur. I've always been an entrepreneur, like ever since I can remember. And I think the moment is just like helping people realizing, like, have you watched what's the movie? Catch Me If You Can.
Oh, yes.
With what's his name? Leonardo
Leonardo.
DiCaprio.
I get
Yeah.
confused for him all the time. People
Like,
tell
yeah,
me.
oh, I'm sure. So, but in he was a scam artist, right? And but it's based on a true story, and he was like a professor. And then when this I don't know who I don't even know who the real person is, like the real guy's name, but they said, like how did you you taught he taught he was a college professor for a while, and they're like, how did you do that? And one of the quotes in there in the movie is he said, or in the guy said is like, you just have to be one chapter ahead of everyone else. And so I think that is like true to just being like a coach, is just like you have to just be one chapter ahead of those that you're teaching. And so I think just realizing, as people started, asking these questions, and I think it's like the longer we're in any profession, we take for granted like our knowledge, where
Right.
we think, oh, everybody knows that, but no, like people don't know. And so I think like my moment was just like, oh my gosh, like I know a lot of stuff about business. Like I can help like a lot of people with these just these basic things that kind of come naturally to me.
Right.
So that
And
was probably my
I
moment.
love that quote. You know what's funny, Brittni, is I've had probably 4 or 5 guests on over the years. That was one of
Hmm.
the big turning moments for them, was actually seeing that movie, because you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm ahead by one step. I don't have to be ahead. I don't even have to be the smartest person in the world. I just have
Oh
to be the
yeah.
smartest one in the room. You're
Yeah,
one
for
step
sure.
ahead.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and people struggle, like how many people struggle with like imposter syndrome? You know what I mean? It's like, hey,
right.
watch that movie and take notes. So for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, and you actually bridge right into my next question very well. That was brilliant. Guys, we did not script this. I promise this. But what was so interesting, Brittni, about that is that the next problem that people have, though, is why me? Everybody has an excuse. I'm 28 years old, and when I was first starting coaching, I think I was like 22. I mean, imagine the imposter syndrome at that age. I'm like, I'm in college, I make no money, they're asking me for marketing help, and
Yeah.
then you could be like, well, I'm old. Oh, I've never actually worked on these type of projects before, whatever. There's 1,000 different reasons why you could have imposter syndrome. But I want to ask you this though, Brittni, because I think you're uniquely qualified for this, is like, how do you keep yourself from feeling like you have to be 40 chapters ahead and trying to teach 40 chapters ahead as a coach, instead of just teaching that one chapter ahead? Does that make sense?
Elaborate a little bit.
Yeah, I'll
I
elaborate on
think
that.
I understand. I think I understand what you're asking, but
Yeah.
elaborate a little bit.
But like, how do you as a coach keep yourself or restrain you to just teaching that one step that you already know, instead of
Mm.
feeling like you have to teach the entire
Oh,
system,
that's
right?
okay. That is like a hard one because I felt like you and I were talking about this a little bit of just even like value, like we invest in things and we want them to be good. And so with me, sometimes like it's like taking a drink from a fire hose. Like I really have to like hold back and say, okay, baby steps. Like that is something that I've had to work on because I do want to give so much information because I want to give value, but sometimes it's just giving that like one little step that is going to help them the most because people get overwhelmed and paralysis by analysis, right? Like when
Right.
there's too many things to do, like we freeze, we don't progress, you know? So I'd have to say that's something that I definitely have to like, something that I have to work on and I have worked on in, in my own business is just like, okay, one step at a time, like it's a system, it's a sequence. You have to learn, like it's layers, even
Right.
funnels. I teach my clients this all the time. Like funnels is like, you're just building layers and layers and layers, but like you have to have the foundations first before you can
Right.
build onto those layers.
Yeah, and I love that was a great response, by the way. I just the reason I asked that is I know for myself, I run into that same problem too. I think it was January or February, we started looking at companies to start growing by acquisitions and bringing new companies on, which is really kind of a tier 3 strategy. You've passed the offer mark, you've finally got a good team in place, and then you can scale through buying other companies. And I started like teaching it on my podcast. I remember stepping back and being like, whoa, 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 these are people who aren't even close to ready to acquire companies at this point. Why are you talking about this? And I know for me, it was kind of that moment where I was like, man, I'm overstepping what I need to do. I need to just back off a little bit and let it be, just teach that one step that I'm great at,
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
anyways, so I just wanted to ask you that. It was a really interesting question. Um, so let's talk systems on this because I know that one of your unique abilities is actually helping people to scale using systems. And you've worked with a lot of people helping them start from scratch and build an actual company. But what have you found to be like the number one, I guess, scaling mistake that you've seen people run into when they're starting a company?
Well, I think like not having, systems in place. Like I always teach that like they don't have standard operating procedures, like SOPs is
Right.
like huge. And I think a lot of people, our wheels are spinning unless we have these like SOPs in place and we know what we're doing. It's like a hamster wheel. Like you're just, you're going and going and going, but you're like not moving anywhere. And so I would say, not having systems, I always say like businesses fail for two main reasons. Either they don't get enough business or they get too much all at once and they can't keep up with it. And it's bad customer service or, that you're losing business that way. And so you have to have systems in place, especially, you're especially like businesses who are just starting out or have smaller teams. Like you can only scale so much. You're only one person. And if you don't have systems and automations, like things are going to fall in the cracks and your business is going to start to like unravel. You have to have like really good like systems in your business to scale. Do you agree? Don't you agree,
Oh, I
Josh?
100% agree. And it's funny, you were talking and I'm nodding over here because I'm like, that's exactly where, because like that's been our business is it's either feast or famine, right? You're overdoing
Mhm.
it. You have way too many sales coming in the door and you're not prepared for it, or you have not enough and you're still suffering because you can't keep enough money coming in the door. And I'm kind of curious what your remedy is to that, because I know for us, identifying that first system. So I will even tell you, we ran into this problem again last month. We were prepping because I was trying to get myself out for 2 or 3 weeks because we were having our first baby, as everybody knows. And so I was like, I can't be there for 2 or 3 weeks. So we've got to kind of ramp up and everything. So we took on a bunch of new sales. And I realized that I hadn't done a good enough job of replacing myself systematically. Excuse me. Sorry, guys. My alarm's going off over here. We'll edit that out. So anyway, so what I found is that when for me, like we're running into the systems issue because we weren't prepared to replace me. I was the system that was unreplaceable at the moment. I didn't do a good enough job of that. And what was happening is we were having poor customer service with some of those new clients because that journey for them wasn't traveled effectively, I guess would be the way of saying that. But so how do you remedy that? And what are the first systems you recommend that people put in place for scaling and preventing that?
Okay, so probably my first one is kind of an exercise that I do with my clients is I have like a little worksheet and I'm like, Kate, what is the client experience from the moment of contact till like you've delivered your product or service, what is that? And write it down, like write down every single step in the process, like whether that's a consult or whatever. And then like go through and like, what can you automate? What are things? So I'm big on automation, but like, what are things in the process that you can automate? What are things you're doing over and over and over again that you can automate? And like, so automate that. So for example, if I'm coaching somebody, I do like to check in on my clients, and I do group coaching, but I still like to check in on my group clients when I'm just have time. But I also have like these systems that are automated, so they, like I have a system set up that they pay, and then it puts them into like, and automatically they get the contract, but then it also puts them into like an email sequence where I'm checking in on them even when I'm not checking in on them. And
Right.
so, like how many times have you worked with a company and you just, or anything, coaching or anything, and you feel like you're not seen or heard, where you're in a group. And so it's so important that you are making the effort, like that you are reaching out. And those are things that you can automate. There's been, several times I live in Houston. And so we have hurricane season. And, like last year, we had a freeze, and we never get a freeze because we don't get snow or anything. And it like knocked us out. Like we were out for like a week, like no power, nothing, like, you know what I mean? And so we don't even have like our like fireplaces here, so, but it was like I had no power, but I would drive down the street to check once a day, go check my email, and it was like I was still bringing in money, my clients were still like getting emails from me, my social media was still being posted because I had created these automations and these systems that were working. And so that's probably my first one, is like the client experience, like know your client experience. What are the steps, and like, what can you automate? So that's probably like one of the very first things that I tell people to do.
And I wish I had known this years ago. I think that was so spot on, Brittany, because that is, in my opinion, the most important automation to have in place is that customer experience. Because we've all been through it. I even recently we paid somebody $30,000 or $35,000 to do a specific system in our business. I kid you not, in 1 month's time, I could not get them to communicate with me for a whole
Most of the
month. And
work.
this is a big company, and most of you would probably know their names. And I remember sitting back going, how have they not mastered this yet? This is like $100 million
Mm-hmm.
company. And so I remember like stepping back, and we actually fired them, which was weird, having to go to this big client. But then we switched to a different one who was probably the number two on that list. And they crushed it. I mean, they did such a good job
Mm-hmm.
of, I mean, I was getting annoyed by how much they were communicating with me, actually. And that's what was really interesting, is I'm like, wow, they actually are going to guide me through this process. So love that answer, Brittany. Um, so when it comes to the customer experience, I want to unpack that a little bit. How should people be bringing these clients into their world, right? So we're talking to agencies and coaches here. We all have basically the same type of process that we should be implementing. So how would you recommend the customer journey should look like for somebody who's an agency when they're onboarding
Yeah.
somebody?
Well, I think too, one of the things, and I've learned this in, I've worked in nonprofit and I've had other businesses, and it's really like people sometimes don't remember like the product or the service, but people always remember like how you made them feel. And so I think that it's just like so important that like a handwritten letter, a thank you letter, like is like so powerful, like knowing when their birthday is, or, like just like these little things. And I think that as you scale in your business and you're like making more and more and more, like you can afford to like create like an awesome like experience where it is, like sending a little gift, sending like a thank you. Because I feel like when you are charging more, like your experience needs to like reflect that. and
Right.
and I mean, like I'm very type A, so I have high standards, but I think there's been times where I've invested in, like different coaching or different programs. And then I've been like, okay, well, this is like, I haven't heard from you, kind of what you were saying, where it was just like, you can check in on me, like, I think personalizing the experience,
Right.
you know, you want to make sure that like everybody feels seen and heard, and that like, whether you are coaching one or like 200 people, you should know like everybody like by their name and their story or whatever. You know what I mean? So
Right.
like probably not by their name. I'm horrible at names, but I can remember like random
The face
details
and the story,
about.
that's what's important.
Yes, yes, yes. So I think it's just, so I think that's like super important, that just like the experience, like how did you make them feel, like did they feel like they were seen and heard, and maybe it's different for men and women. I don't know. Is
No,
it
I
like,
would 100% agree. I don't think that's a gender specific thing.
okay,
The
okay.
truth of it is we all want to be taken care of. It's a status
Yeah,
thing, right? When
yeah,
we go
yeah,
to a $50 hotel, we're expecting a 5-star treatment no matter what, right?
yeah, yeah,
And when in all reality, it's like, well, you paid $50. It's not going to be a concierge
yeah, yeah,
service hotel, right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yes, so that's I would say yes, it isn't gender specific, and I agree with you 100%. We hired somebody to do some systems for us a while back, and one of the things that they told me was like, well, what's your reward system for your clients? And I remember going, that's a weird, that just sounds weird. It's like they're dogs. Like, how do we treat them? Is have a reward system for them. But they're like, well, when a client hits a milestone, send them a gift. They're already
Hmm.
paying you so much money, just allot it into your budget or increase your prices and then allot it into your budget. um, I remember just thinking, this is brilliant. I
Hmm.
can't even imagine, like, for myself, if I hit a milestone, like just say I got my first lead or I got my first sale from their service, if they were to send me, some really cool award or something, that would make me feel really good. Like, yeah, you know
Yeah,
what? I made a
yeah,
good decision. It reaffirms their decision to buy with you. So I
yeah,
love it. Your whole
yeah.
customer experience thing, it touches a
Well,
nerve because we're focusing on right now.
yeah. Well, and don't you think like marketing is really like it's becoming memorable, and that's
Yeah.
why I'm constantly pushing with my clients, like, like repurpose content, like, get on, don't be on a million platforms, but like get on a platform and like repurpose that content, like in your email marketing on different platforms, because people might not need your service right now, but when they do, like, are they going to remember you? Are they going to remember to refer you? Like becoming memorable. And I really think it's like that experience that really makes you like memorable, those little
Yeah.
things.
Wow. Yeah, that's brilliant. Memorable. Are you memorable? And that's the word I think we should be thinking about, especially in the agency world and as coaches, right? It's become so commonplace to be a coach or an agency, and it feels hard to stand out. And I hear that over and over again. Well, it's just hard to stand out from this. But what you're saying is that's the difference, right?
Hmm.
And if you ask any entrepreneur, if you ask them, well, what's your differentiating factor, right? They'll always say, we care more. That's like one of their things. Oh, we care more. Oh, and we do this extra thing. But you don't care more by feeling, you care more by actions. And if you
Hmm.
show them and you reward them and you, like you said, they come in, they just feel so welcome and accepted and they're part of that family and you have that relationship with them, they're going to stay forever. So I love that. It's
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. What
we
is
spread
yours?
more.
What is your different? What did you say? How did you
The
phrase that?
differentiating factor.
I always say like, what's your superpower? But like, yeah, let's go with that. What is yours?
Ours is really making you legacy based. It's literally we're
Oh, that's
making you
awesome.
ridiculously visible.
Oh,
And
that's awesome.
because people in the content creator space, and I love that you asked us this, people in the content creator space, it's like, oh, we have a content strategy for you. But like people don't care about that. We're here to make you famous. That's what we're here to
Yeah, yeah.
do. We
Outcome,
want to make you
outcome
a top
based.
podcaster.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and yeah, so we're trying to make our differentiating factor be have a bunch of little ones like sending them
Hmm.
gifts, and we're actually in the process right now of training somebody. Their entire role is going to be making sure the client feels welcome, and they're going to
That's
be sending
awesome.
them gifts and like personalized gifts, like we're allotting a big part of our budget, raising our prices and everything so we can make sure to be providing that good of a service. So
Yeah,
love
that's
that
awesome.
question. So, Brittni, you mentioned you're a type A personality. Now, I should know this. On the disc profile, is that a DI? Is
Oh,
that
I
what
don't
you
know
are?
I don't know the disc profile. I'm
Dang
very
it.
like analytical. I'm very like, um, so I did photography for years,
Right.
and I had to work harder at the creative part, but the business part comes naturally because like my dad's an engineer. Like I think
You're a
in,
DC, I think is what it is.
yeah, I don't know
Because
that one.
you're a crazy good driver because you're like
Yeah,
get it done, but you're also hyper
yes,
analytical. See, my
yes.
problem is I'm a DI, so I'm a big driver, but I'm like, hey, somebody clean up my mess. Like I'm gonna make all
Okay,
this
gotcha.
chaos, you make it work, right?
I'm very organized. Yeah, I do spreadsheets for like a hobby in my pastime. Like, let's just make a spreadsheet for this. So
What's weird is I
that's
actually
how.
really enjoy that too, but it's not my personality type. I don't know how
Yeah.
that worked
Yeah.
out, but maybe schooling did that to me.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So the reason I asked that is a lot of the people who listen to the show consider themselves introverts, right? And I would actually
Mhm.
consider you, from what I know of you in the past hour that we've known each other, that you are pretty extroverted, right?
Yeah.
You're totally fine being out there and what I like to call like the dancing monkey for your company, right? That's what I am.
Mhm. Yeah.
How would you recommend for somebody who's more introverted to incorporate systems that don't put them into a box, like getting them
Yeah.
away from the people role?
Yeah. Well, I think you have to focus on like what you're good at, like what are your strengths, and I teach this all the time. Like what works for me is not going to work for everybody else because I am extroverted. Like I told you this before we started recording. I said, "Oh, I was networking before I even realized like it was a thing." Like I just am a very like curious, inquisitive person. I ask a lot of questions. And so I think you have to like focus on what you're good at. Like I always say, like I can teach you every single thing that I know how to do that has made me successful, but that doesn't mean that it's going to work for me. Somebody who's introverted might be a really great writer and they spend a lot of time on like email marketing or writing blogs or something like that. So you have to like focus on your strengths. And I always say, like, here's point A and point B. There's like so many different ways to get there. And we see all these like influencers or whatever, and they're doing it this way, and we think we have to do it that way to have the success, and that's not true. It's really not. Like everybody is different. So find what you want to do and be committed to what you decide that, like, hey, I'm going to do, like, I want to work on SEO. I'm a blogger. I don't want to be on like social media. Like commit and be consistent and just stay in your lane and focus on what you're good at.
Yeah, that's brilliant. What's funny to me is that a lot of entrepreneurs feel like in order to be an entrepreneur, like you said, or an influencer, whatever you want to call it, is they feel like they have to be the Russell Brunson, the Gary Vaynerchuk, the flagship person at the front of their company. But it's been interesting to watch that in our day and age is you can actually come in as that introvert type person who's maybe way more systems oriented, doesn't care to do any marketing. And all you have to do is find somebody who is a visionary, likes to be in front of people, and you just partner. And what's
Mm-hmm.
interesting is you're both still guiding the company's direction, and you can still have 100% say in what's going on, but it's putting you in a position of strength instead of into your weak areas. And I know for me, that would have helped me speed up a lot in the beginning is knowing, oh, I need to partner with somebody who's very good at systems,
Mm-hmm.
but who is also a driver who wants to keep those systems moving. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I love where you're going with that. So I want to ask you this, Brittni. We are coming up to the end here. So the first thing I want to ask you is if you could give one actionable step to our audience, something they could go apply right now after this call, what would that be?
So one of my favorite like mantras, if you will, is automate, delegate, and eliminate. So something is just look at like your business and where are you getting an ROI? Where are you getting a return on investment? Are you spending like 5 hours on social media, but you're not getting clients from there? And if that's the case, like eliminate that and find ways that you can automate things that are a distraction to you and then delegate. Kind of just like touching on what we were just kind of talking about is like, if like delegate your weaknesses. I do think it's important to like have a knowledge and understanding of every aspect of your business, but understand it, and then if you don't want to do it and you're not good at it, delegate it. But I think that you have to have a knowledge in order to be a good manager, because I mean, I'm sure you've seen this a million times. Like I know you did Facebook ads, but it's like if people don't, like, how many times are we hiring people who really don't know what they're doing? And so I do think you have to have, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent, but like,
That's good. That's good.
like, but no, like have a knowledge of like all of the parts of your business. And then if you're not getting a return on investment, like you delegate that, you know? So that's probably like those are my words of wisdom for an entrepreneur.
Well, and I love it. And I want to highlight one point in there, which is eliminate. That's the hardest thing to do as an entrepreneur is to look at
Mm-hmm.
something and hand it off, to delegate and eliminate it. And I know for me, right? I actually really genuinely enjoy editing podcasts and creating content and these things. I'm not really an artist, but for some reason that stuff just makes sense to me. But I recently hired a coach, Cole Gordon, and he was the first call. He's like, Josh, um, I never want you to touch anything fulfillment related. I don't even want you involved in the fulfillment process of your business ever again. He's like, by the end of the week, I need you out of the fulfillment. And I remember just like being floored, going, oh, but it's so hard to like hand that off to somebody and just hope that everything gets done and everything. And there were some hiccups, but it's actually helped a lot to have that fulfillment completely out of my hands. And I know that you almost need somebody to like whip you to get you to not do things, because as entrepreneurs,
I think it's, yeah, and I think it's hard because when you're an entrepreneur, I think like it's your baby. Like no, I don't care. You can hire the most amazing people, but like nobody loves it the way that you do. Nobody cares, and so that's definitely like a struggle of mine. Like I'm a control freak. Like I want it done and I want it done right. And like, I've had to like let go of some things that aren't like, they're not helping me like progress. They're not helping me scale and grow, but I want them done a certain way. And I've had to let go of some of that control, that is a hard one.
Yeah, it's yeah, letting go is difficult. I could rant on that for days, but it's definitely difficult.
Yeah.
So Brittni, where do you actually post the most? Do you blog? Do you hang out on Facebook, Instagram? Are you a podcaster? Where do you hang out?
So I would say Instagram is probably my jam, where I post on there and then I repurpose. Oh, that's another tip, repurpose. That's you too, right?
That's our business, guys. She's preaching for us.
Yes, that is Josh. That is Josh. But so I would say like Instagram, but I also like I don't spend a ton of time on there. I'm big on like Mondays are content creation day. I do all my content creation on Monday. It's scheduled, one and done. And then I engage and use social media as like a place to socialize and network. But I would say like Instagram is probably my jam. If I had to pick one, it would be Instagram.
I love that. So what's your handle? Where can people access that?
Brittni.Schroeder, Brittni .Schroeder. So I'm the oldest Brittni that I have ever met. I had to think how old I am. I'm 44. I have to think 44.
So you're the namesake of Brittni. You're like,
yeah,
everyone's named after me.
Yeah, I always say like Brittni, like Spears, but better, way better.
And I have all my hair, she says.
Yes.
Sorry,
yes.
Brittni, if you're listening to this,
Yes, sorry.
Love that. Okay, so I want to ask you one final question then. And before I do that, actually, everybody, make sure you go check out BrittniSchroeder.com. That's where you can get in communication with Brittni at any time. So, Brittni, if you could give us one final parting piece of guidance, what would it be?
Okay, this is the part where you said I was going to be uncomfortable, or is there something more uncomfortable after this?
No, this is the most uncomfortable part of the whole interview.
Gosh, I feel like I gave my good stuff with automate, delegate, and eliminate. Okay, so
how about I rephrase that question for you to make it easier for you?
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you this: if you were on your deathbed and you had an entrepreneur sitting there, what would you tell them?
What would I tell them? I would tell them well, like aside from systems and automations, I would say like be consistent, learn how to fail, and like get good in your mind. Like mindset is like it's huge. If you don't believe in yourself, nobody else will.